Float like a butterfly, sting like the extension Derek Stingley got Monday. This move makes a lot of sense for the Houston Texans. We'll tell you why and why keeping homegrown products inside the house is the best thing the Houston Texans can do, y'all.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, I am your Credential Media member, John Hickman, alongside Credential Media member and the man with the big hat for our audio listeners holding up the Derek Stingley SARS jersey with the 24 on there, Brian Big SARS Badfield. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. If you're being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head on over to FanDuel right now to get in on the college hoops action. On today's show, we will be diving into can Cole Popovich handle the pressure. Hey, listen, they just took away a major weapon for him last week, made some room to maybe keep some of those guys inside the house like Derek Stingley, but can he handle the pressure of refixing a broken offensive line? We'll dive into the latest free agency moves, maybe under the radar type of moves, but moves that make sense. We open up today's show. Bag season equals Derek Stingley season, the new $30 million man, Derek Stingley. The $89 million guaranteed man, Derek Stingley. The man that deserved it. Sarge Stingley was regarded as no lower than cornerback 2 throughout last season. His new deal just shattered J.C. Horn's APY, and it is well-deserved for someone who's been around this man, and a man of very few words. What do you think is going through his mind right now as he's, that ink dried on that paper?
Well, look, you do know, first of all, hello, greetings and salutations, Mr. Hickman. Our good friend of the show, Houston Chronicle NFL beat writer, covering the Houston Texans, Jonathan Alexander, put out a tweet earlier today and said that in typical Derek Stingley Jr. fashion, when he got the news that he was getting the extension, guess where he was? In the weight room. He was at the facility in the weight room. John, if hard work was a person, you would be the walking definition of hard work is Derek Stingley Jr.
No doubt.
And he's one of those guys, John, where you ever seen one of those guys that are just like naturally gifted? Like Derek Stingley Jr. is like naturally gifted at what he does. He's naturally gifted at playing that cornerback position. And he plays the cornerback position with the mindset of a wide receiver. John, you remember how great Richard Sherman was when he was with the Legion of Doom in the Seattle Seahawks?
Yes.
He said one of the reasons why was because, he played wide receiver at Stanford.
Yes.
He said so he knows the routes. And so because Derek Stingley Jr., knows all these routes, he wanted to, I think he might have played a little bit of wide receiver when he was in high school. Don't quote me on that, but I think he did. But when you walk on a campus and you got to go up against Justin Jefferson, when you got to go up against Jamar Chase, when you got to go up against some other players that have made it into the NFL, you're looking at a Derek Stingley Jr., and he still was the best cornerback in the nation as soon as he stepped on LSU's campus. And now he's battling those guys one-on-one daily, getting himself better. And then you fast forward to the 2023 season, and every day at practice, it's either Nico Collins lining up in front of him. It's either Tank Dell lining up in front of him. It's either Stephon Diggs lining up in front of him. And all he does is just does what he's supposed to do. Now, I've seen Derek Stingley get beat, 1 or 2 times. And it ain't often. It is not often. There is nobody that can go to the tape over the last 2 years and see Derek Stingley getting beat that bad. And I know, John, why you're laughing, because you're talking about the Patriots game, and I can tell you why that happened.
No.
Another show for time. But John, when you look at, he started out the 2023 season on injury reserve. But when he came back, John, the rest of that season, all he did was ball out, and all that did was roll over into 2024. And so here's a young man that, he does more. He puts more of his words into action, and those are limited words. He doesn't like to speak to the media a lot. Now you can talk to him to the side, and he'll talk to you all day. I got a chance to have a one-on-one with him after practice doing training camp in Ohio before they went to Pittsburgh, and I asked him about going up against those wide receivers and how much they helped him become better. And he was just like, every day, Sarge, I just try to get better and better. And I said, Derek, you keep your helmet on after practice. Like, you go through a whole 2-hour practice, and then you walk off the field. It's still hot, but you still got your helmet on. He said, because when I got that helmet on, I'm still thinking about the plays that I missed. He said, I don't care about everything that I did right. I'm thinking about the plays that I missed. And so I preface all that to say this. What the Houston Texans did was they showed Derek Stingley Jr. how much they appreciated him.
Yeah.
On the field and off the field, helping Kamari Lassiter become the cornerback that he is. So that was great what they did, John.
I was laughing because I saw a couple of Colts fans and people who, I just saw a few tweets from Colts World with the quotation marks, the new $30 million man, and they showed a play of the overthrown pass by Anthony Richardson to Adonai Mitchell this past season. And it's just like, brother, you lost. So anyways, Derek Stingley last year per Next Gen Stats allowed just 4.9 yards per target last season, fewest among outside cornerbacks, which was better than PS2. Stingley also only allowed 42 completions across 90 targets, including 18 passes defended. The best part about this contract, and I think this is where Houston Texan fans should really rejoice, the best part of this contract extension is Houston will have him under contract until he's 29, right? And they also, in the contract extension, picked up that 5th-year option. So where he's, the money won't technically kick in until 2027. He'll be under contract 2027, 2028, 2029. But for the next 2 seasons, including this one and the next year, that still gives Houston a lot of flexibility to bring in a big name or two or a big contributor or two. Name may not matter, but contribution does, right? And so I think that's where everybody should be rejoicing. And this just allows for Houston to keep a player who constantly gives them a chance on the outside in Houston. Sarge, the A.J. Bouye year, that was the last, great young corner back for Houston. I would say before Stingley, the last great corner for Houston, good, great, depending on how a lot of people may feel about him, Steven Nelson. But young corner, A.J. Bouye. Yeah. And that was a player who balled out that last year in Houston. The expectation was, hey, do not let him walk out their door. He signs a 5-year deal with Jacksonville for $67 million or something like that.
Are we not saying Jonathan Joseph because you don't think he was young?
Well, by the time J. Joe, great years with the 2010, 2011, 2012 team. So, yes, he was probably, until Derek Stingley may have a couple more seasons, he's probably the best cornerback in Texas franchise history. Yeah. But youth-wise, it was A.J. Bouye, and they let him go. And so I think this time around, there's some guys that are still in the building that may remember that. But remember this, Nick Caserio drafted Derek Stingley, and his words were, you do not find players like this that grow on trees. Mm-hmm. Once in a lifetime type of talent, once in a lifetime type of player, once in a lifetime type of person, because Derek Stingley is never going to give you problems off the field. You're never going to have to worry about him saying the wrong thing in the media. You may have to worry about him not saying anything in the media, right? Yep. He may give you 8 words, Sarge. You know this more than anybody. So, they got a player that embodies what this franchise is about. Swarm mentality, guys that are leaders, guys that are going to take care of themselves on and off the field. And I do think, especially for Nick Caserio, because year one, the expectation of that draft was extremely low. Came out with it with Nico Collins, came out with it with Davis Mills. Year two, when those picks rolled in and you got the Deshaun Watson money back, and not money back, but the picks back, it was really like, who you going to go with? Derek Stingley, Sauce Gardner, what are you going to do? Derek Stingley is Nick Caserio's first pressure pick that he hit on. And so I'm sure he was like, man, I gotta show love to this guy because he's been everything I wanted and more.
And I was going to say this real quick, John. A couple of things. One, hey, man, let's just be honest. Hey, Lovie Smith is the gift that keeps on giving, man. Because, there's a clip that I put out. I forgot that it was out there about when Derek Stingley Jr. got the call. And Lovie Smith had him, called him and told him, "Are you ready to, cover the number one wide receiver, which was an oxymoron because he kept putting him in cover 2 zone and, wouldn't let him play man a lot that one year." I know, John, I'm still salty about that because we asked Lovie about that all the time. But, then, you won the game against the Indianapolis Colts, and then look at that, save Nick Caserio for himself so he could just pick number 2, stay right there. But with that being said, the one thing that I love about Derek Stingley is his football mind. He's such a brilliant guy. Last season, I was talking to Derek. I don't even know how this came up. I don't even know what conversation we were having. And I think it was because he was getting ready to go up against some wide receiver that was, that was really good. And then Derek started talking to me, and Derek was like, "I really don't forget routes, Sarge." He said, "I don't forget routes." He said, and then he took me back to 2022 when they played against the Raiders and Devontae Adams tried to run the same move on him twice. And he's like, he did it once. I seen the route. He came back later on in the game, tried to run it against me again. And I was like, no, I already know what this route is. And so he was able to jump it. And then he told me about another wide receiver who had tendencies on tape that he had picked up on. But, of course, early in the game, he let him get away with one of the tendencies so he could think that he could do it. And then I think later on in the game, Derek got an interception or something like that. But this is the type of mindset that he has. And, you go back and you think about where he's come from, man. And everybody knows the story about his grandfather and then how much his father has instilled in him that discipline and that work ethic.
Yeah, we got to talk about the free agency moves that the Houston Texans made on Monday. Very low key, very under the radar, all about depth, maybe some impact. We'll dive into that on today's show. However, guys, March Madness is here. Madness, taking off like a cabinet. March Madness is here. FanDuel is hooking y'all up so y'all can live like Future back in 2015, but they continue to give you all the opportunity and chances to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something to be excited about and exciting to bet on. FanDuel is easy to use. When you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around. And if you got your eye on a few underdogs this year, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long. That's FanDuel.com.
Welcome back, Battle Red Nation, to the Locked On Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, John. Your team
every day.
John, the Houston Texans continue to add to their team through free agency. On Monday, they added cornerback Ronald Darby to a 1-year, $2.5 million contract, former Jacksonville Jaguar cornerback. And then they also added –
Jags keep looking out for us, huh? That's what they're going to do.
And they also add – the Texans sent them Eric Murray. They also you're all-star. They also added fullback Jacob Johnson to a 1-year deal. I think his last team was with the New York Giants. John, as we watch this team, as we watch the Houston Texans, as we watch Nick Caserio continue to add to this team with a lot of these free agents, and it looks like to me, John, they look like a lot of just camp bodies. They look like a lot of camp bodies. They look like depth pieces. But am I looking at this thing totally wrong?
Well, yes and no. So this is, again, Houston has a couple of fullbacks on the roster right now. Houston also, they got Cade Stover, a guy that, and then they'll have our guy, Brevin Jordan, coming back. Two guys that seem like Houston, at least to this point with what we've seen, want to move them around a lot in the offense. They could have more defined roles this year under Nick Caley. But the thought process with Nick Caley coming in is he's still going to utilize some of those guys in motions and shifting them around. And both Cade Stover and Brevin Jordan fit into their role, whether it's an H-back, whether they're tight, whether in the backfield, whatever it is. So Jacob Johnson, former Patriot. So you're getting somebody that you got some familiarity with, especially for Cole Popovich, and we'll talk about him later. He's a guy that really did a good job with Ramondre Stevenson, blocking for him out of the backfield. Had a fairly good year a couple of years ago with Josh Jacobs. But the move that I like the most, and I think this is where we'll get into some of the football talk about it, is just, Ronald Darby. For Houston, they signed him to a 1-year deal, $2.5 million. What did they do last year? Well, they also signed both CJ Henderson and Jeff Okudah to 1-year deals. CJ Henderson didn't get a chance to play no real football for Houston. Jeff Okudah, played some games, but he wasn't impactful, right? And so for you guys that are out there, what does Ronald Darby do? It may be a couple of years late, Sarge, but the last 2 seasons, 19 games for Jeff Okudah, 9 games started. The last 2 seasons for Ronald Darby, 29 games, 19 games started. And you look at his great days, his glory days that may be behind him, but let's just say he's just a relief guy. He can come in and do some things inside and outside with a Kamari Lassiter. He can come in and maybe take on your wide receiver 2 at times. He can do some things. And with the Texans front 4 that are going to consistently create that pressure, it makes the back end of their defense's job extremely easier. So Ronald Darby could just be a camp body. CJ Henderson was just a camp body. But as the roster is currently put together, Sarge, the man who just got paid, he got 30 million reasons to not be touched.
Yeah.
You also got the rookie who, again, blows our mind why he wasn't an all-rookie team or whatever for the defense side of the ball. Kamari ain't going nowhere. The rest of that cornerback room is very underwhelming, to say the least. And so I think Ronald Darby could be a guy that isn't just a camp body, does make the roster, and can give Houston meaningful games. I've said it all offseason. DeMeco Ryans is not going to, allow the same thing that hurt him last year to continue to hurt him. And I don't think trusting a player like Jeff Okudah is going to happen again. So I like the Ronald Darby signing.
Okay. So, John, when last season when they got CJ Henderson and Jeff Okudah, especially Jeff Okudah, who went, number 3? And did he go number 3 in the draft that he came out of?
Yes.
To the Atlanta Falcons.
2020.
Yeah, I think he went number 3 in that draft to the Atlanta Falcons. I know he went high. And I'm saying to myself, I know that he was shipped around a lot. And he finally made it to the Houston Texans, a place where I thought that he was going to be able to fit in well and get a fresh start, get a new start. One of the things that head coach DeMeco Ryans would say all the time is, when I look at these guys, when I bring them to my team, I look at them through my own eyes. I don't want to listen to what nobody else had to say about them. I don't want to, what it was somebody else seen. I know how to evaluate talent on my own. And if they're on this team, if they're on this field, they're here for a reason. And they're here for a reason that I wanted them here. And so I thought that, when I seen CJ Henderson get cut, I was like, okay. And then I thought Jeff Okudah was really going to have an opportunity to play. But the injury bug really, really hurt him and hurt his chances of being on the field a lot. And then when he did get on the field, John, he wasn't as productive as he should have been. And so I can see that. This is the same way I feel with this Ronald Darby signing. He's 31 years old. His best year was when he won a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. And then after that, he went to Denver for 2 years. He was in Baltimore for 1 year. He was in Jacksonville for 1 year. And now you look at him and he becomes, you have to ask yourself a question. Why is a guy a journeyman? Why does he keep going from team to team to team to team, especially after, he's had 1 or 2 good seasons? Like if you have 1 or 2 good seasons, then, you should be able to stick around with a team at least 1 or 2 more. But you get to moving around and get to shifting. And I understand that a lot of times sometimes it has to do with the business side of it. Sometimes, teams want to want to move on because of salary cap reasons. Teams want to move on because maybe they're trying to get younger or whatever the case may be. But a 31-year-old cornerback who has been in the league for a while and hasn't, really just played good football, for a long time. I mean, and I don't want to knock him. I don't want to knock Ronald Darby and say that he can't play. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that he can't play. I'm not saying he can't come to the Houston Texans and be productive. But what I'm saying is that why? And I understand he's cheap, but is this just another guy for Frank Ross to have on special teams? Because, and I hate to say this, John, I really hate to say this, but I'm gonna say it. I understand how good he used to be, but now it looks like he may just feel in that Chris Boyd slot.
His last very good year. His last very good year, 2023, actually, with Baltimore. 16 games, only started 7, but he was featured in 16 games. I think that's a positive. Started in 7 of those games, only allowed 9.1 yards per completion, only allowed 4.0 yards per target, only allowed 1 TD, had a passer rating of 63.3, only allowed 172 yards that year. 2023, you want to know what the positive from 2023 for the Ravens and what we see from the Houston Texans from 2024 moving forward?
What's that?
The Ravens led the league in sacks that year.
Yeah.
We know what the D-line in Houston can do in terms of causing disruption. Again, this entire DB room that Houston has benefits off of Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter.
Yeah.
Who I guess in the coming days, are we going to see him get an extension soon? Goodness gracious. But that's just the reality. He is a guy that, with the pressure in front of him, forcing quarterbacks off their game, he can get sticky. When you look at what the Jacksonville Jaguars were able to do last year or lack thereof, I don't know if they had a lot of pressure up front. I don't know if that defense altogether had anything to benefit an older cornerback in the NFL. But I also will say this, bringing in Ronald Darby does something that I think, again, we all should be happy about. And that leaves for the Houston Texans, that leaves them room for them to be active in later rounds searching for a cornerback. And I think that's the positive takeaway.
And real quick, John, I know we spent a lot of time talking about Ronald Darby, and that's because the Houston Texans just got him. But, John, if we're in the middle of the season talking about Ronald Darby, then that means something that's happened to Derek Stingley or Kamari Lassiter. I should hear Ronald
Darby. The last person that said something like that?
Cody?
Last year before Cody Davis left, he said, we are in the middle of the season. We're talking about Blake Fisher. Something has terribly went wrong. And
bro, I'm not Cody. Hey, look. Hey, what's his name?
Oh, man, don't do it. Don't do it to him, Coco.
Coco. I'm not Coco.
But, no, I think it's a good movie. It's kind of like Braxton Berrios, Justin Watson. Gives your team assurance. You get a champion in the building that knows what it takes, right? Can still play some corner, all things considered. And, again, I am trusting 29 games over the last 2 seasons compared to 19. I am trusting 19 games started compared to 9 from Jeff Okudah.
John,
who's not on the roster, and it gives them some flexibility in the draft.
John, I know we got to go to a break, but one day you and I are going to have this conversation about bringing championship mentality. Sometimes people are on championship teams just because they're on the roster.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, Brian Scalabrine. I think this is the year he can tell his grandkids he's better than Kobe. We got more Locked On Texans on the way. Can Cole Popovich handle the pressure of now being the front man, the voice for that offensive line?
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Hey, get down with the brackets. It's that time of year. For some people, it's the most wonderful time of the year. For me, it's the most chaotic time of the year because I know Texas.
Trying to watch the games at work, but I'm listening.
Oh, please don't say that because I may have some people to watch the show that I work with, and they may be scoping over me. What you doing? But Cole Popovich,
yeah,
he's a man. He is going to be the voice. He's the coach. He's a guy that comes from that Patriot background, right? Highly regarded. The only reason why it didn't work out with him in New England was because of COVID. He didn't want to take the COVID shot. He was rerouted back to high school, worked his way back into the NFL, back in Houston. Now he's taken over, but they took away, regardless of how we feel about Laremy Tunsil, they took away one of the more premier pass blocking tackles in the NFL.
Yeah.
They traded away a guy that he knew, released a guy that he knew and had some success with in Shaq Mason. No more Kenyon Green. Can he handle the pressure of reforming this offensive line? And I guess in a blue collar way, Sarge, like this ain't gonna be pretty, it ain't gonna be flashy. They're gonna get gritty. We're gonna have to get a little bit different from what they've been doing. Can he handle that pressure?
That's a great question, John. And the one thing that I've always wanted to know was, and you know this better than I do, John, one of the best, and I had to make sure that I had it because I didn't want to butcher his name. John, one of the best offensive line coaches in NFL history, used to coach for the New England Patriots. Now, make sure I don't want to. How do you say his name? Scarnecchi? Dante Scarnecchi?
I just call him a great coach.
John, Cole Popovich had the opportunity to learn up under him. And when you look at and you go back and you look at those great offensive line, but also just the offensive play from the New England Patriots during that time, and Cole Popovich getting an opportunity to learn some things from him, you look and you say, okay, at some point that's going to have to kick in. And last season I think that he was trying to do what he could, but when you're second in charge and when you have someone above you who's first in charge and they have their own way of doing it, they have their own way of trying to get things done. They want to implement their own system. They want to implement their own scheme. Sometimes they do like this, John. La, 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 la. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to listen. And so, in that offensive line room last year, Cole Popovich was, trying to help that offensive line deal with the delayed blitzes and the stunts. And at some point, Chris Strausser just stopped listening. And when he stopped listening, that's when you've seen the continuous bad
downfall. What's the word? Putrid play.
Putrid. Yeah, for sure. And so, so with that being said, John, and I'm gonna say this right here. When you look at it, there's all this talk about a toxic offensive line room, and all these people have these, these toxic offensive line, toxic offensive linemen. Toxic offensive lineman who was disruptive in the room. No, those offensive linemen, John, sometimes Cole Popovich would say something, and then Chris Strausser would say something, and then Cole Popovich would say something, and then Chris Strausser would say something. And even if Cole Popovich was right, you can't go over Chris Strausser because he is the one who determines the playing time. He is the lead dog in the room. No matter if it's wrong, you got this guy over here saying, trying to say, if he's not listening and he's the one that implements everything, if he's the one that controls the time, then John, you got to listen to that guy. That's why I love what DeMeco Ryans has done by cleaning up that room and making it one voice.
Oh yeah, for me, listen, man, it was times last year we were very despondent watching that offensive line. But what I will say, here's why, again, Texas fans should have some faith in this man because he's going to have his work cut out for him. My question is, can he pull a 2020 where the Patriot team had young talent across that offensive line, was one of the best yards per carry running teams in the league that year, and did a very solid job protecting their quarterback, which was Cam Newton. And Cam Newton don't make it easy for linemen to block for him in terms of pass blocking. because he uses his athleticism to extend plays at times. So he was a part of that offensive line coaching staff. Again, that was before the COVID thing kicked off, and he was no longer with the Patriots. But if he could bring some of those results to an offensive line that would feature Titus Howard, still somewhat of a young player. This is Titus' 7th year.
Yeah, he came on 2019.
2019.
It's 2019. Yeah.
That was that Bill O'Brien's last year?
Was it? Hold on.
No, that was the year before everything went down. That was Brian Gaines last year.
Yes, Brian Gaines.
But that he's still a young player. Blake Fisher will be going into his 2nd year.
Yeah, 2019. He was drafted first.
So the inside guys are going to be young still, depending on who they go with in terms of Patterson, Juice, who they go with the draft, right? Tomlinson will be another vet. Can they work it out? For Cole, I mean, like I said, he'll have his work cut out for him, but I think he can handle the pressure of the expectations that comes with it because he knows what a successful offensive line looks like. And he also knows how to get the most out of guys. Some of these guys are just not going to beat your pure talent. But scheme matters. Overall, Sarge, it's a word that I can't wait to see from this unit. Cohesiveness matters. And that's where the Houston Texans failed themselves all last year on that offensive line. They never, outside of week 1, moved like a cohesive unit.
Yeah, you're right, John. And that's the one thing that I want to see too. And you've heard me say this on this show before. You and I have discussed it. In order for them to move as a cohesive unit, in order for them to move as one single unit, that has to start from OTAs.
Yeah.
From OTAs through training camp through preseason. I'm not saying you play your starting offensive line a bunch of snaps in preseason, but you get them out there enough so they'll know each other's tendency, because you're getting a lot of people who are going to be playing different positions. And if you're going to start out with Blake Fisher playing that right tackle and Titus Howard playing the left tackle position, you want them to get to know what they're doing early on, and then whatever the interior part is going to look like, you do that. And so, yeah, you want them to
I don't know if you talked to Cody today, but the last time I heard that, Cody Davis was on this show, and he talked about that from preseason. I swear it felt like we were talking, why aren't these guys out there? But yes, absolutely, yes. Get them out there for some snaps. And because you do not have Laremy Tunsil, there is no excuse not to see those guys.
Yeah. That's all.
Thank y'all for watching today's episode. He channeled the spirit of C. Davis, man, who's out there in New Orleans right now. So shout out to him. Shout out to Derek Stingley. Man, if you see this, just hit me on my Cash App. Just give me a couple games, tickets to the games for my family. You got it. But thank y'all for watching today's episode. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. By the way, I don't know what got to y'all Texas fans, but we appreciate it. The Monday episode is almost at 6,000 views. So thank you guys. Keep running them up. I'm John Hickman. Please be sure to follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. And again, follow and subscribe on YouTube, Locked On Texans.
And you can follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Star Sports with a Z at the end.
Until next time, ladies and gents, peace.